Remember back in the days around 2018 or so when NBA free agency would take more than a few seconds to reveal itself, when we'd be waiting on marquee players to make decisions for days, all the while tracking their every move and tweet. Things sure have changed. Free agency now unfolds pretty much before it ever starts. Rumors of contracts and trades leak out days in advance, and official agreements hit the breaking news wire immediately after the clock strikes 6 p.m. Eastern Time.
Powell. And here, I got a little trade for you here, Scott. Hold on.
Here we go. Here we go. Breaking news, Woj bomb. I knew something was happening. You started looking at your phone, getting all nervous.
Yeah, I know. I don't ever do that with you. This is a small one. Detroit is trading DeLon Wright to the Kings for guard Corey Joseph and 2 second-round picks, I'm told. So
It can be underwhelming, and frankly, steal some of the fun from the entire process. Yours truly only has the brain bandwidth to fire off so many bad jokes when 60-some players are striking deals within 6 hours. On the bright side though, this is frenetic, potentially illegal pace allows us to dive into nuts and bolts of free agency sooner. In this case, that means identifying the biggest winners and losers. Sure, there's a lot of offseason left to transverse. These are just my initial impressions based off everything that's happened so far. First, a winner, the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls were on track to have a very nice offseason. Alex Caruso fills a defensive void on the perimeter, and Lonzo Ball is a defined offensive fit next to Zach LaVine. And also, I almost forgot they signed and traded for DeMar DeRozan. And not only did they sign and trade for DeRozan, but they gave him a fully guaranteed 3-year $85 million deal while forking over a 2025 first rounder, 2 seconds, and Thaddeus Young in the process. To be honest though, DeMar DeRozan's fit in the Bulls is aneh. He is an operable ISO scorer and has turned into one of the league's more dangerous pick-and-roll maestros, but he is a non-factor when they plays from the ball and compromises an already shaky defensive dynamic. His teams have allowed more points per 100 possessions with him on the floor in each of the past 6 seasons. Sure, don't get me wrong, taking chances is perfectly fine, but where was DeRozan's leverage that Chicago needed to guarantee him an average of $28.3 million per year? And also, where was the San Antonio Spurs' leverage that they were able to extract a protected distant first rounder, 2 seconds, and the last most valuable defensive player last season? Perhaps this all works out. Sliding DeRozan up to the 4 lineups that could feature Nikola Vucevic can help alleviate some of the spacing concerns, and he gives Chicago a genuine offensive lifeline when Zach LaVine is on the bench. But after already mortgaging part of the future at last year's trade deadline, and with Zach LaVine set to hit unrestricted free agency next summer, the Bulls as they stand profile as uncomfortably combustible. But hey, the season has not started yet, so who knows what else can unfold. Coming up next though is a probable winner in East, the New York Knicks. Certain Knicks fans will inevitably take this as an insult, but it's not. Their off-season was eminently defensible. But landing Kemba Walker for sub-mid-level money is the only undisputable victory of this off-season. Re-signing Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel, and Derrick Rose without including a third guaranteed season changes the context of those deals. And also the 4-year $78 million contract given to Evan Fournier, which includes a team option on the final installment, and locking down Julius Randle on a max extension well south of what a max deal would have run for him next summer, up to 5 years and $207 million. It could be a flashbulb moment the Knicks brag about down the line. At the same time, New York has significantly reinvested in last season's explosion while losing its best perimeter defender in Reggie Bullock. None of the commitments are inherently damaging. The Knicks remain flexible over the long term, and it wasn't like any superstars were available to scoop up in free agency. But interpreting last year as a new normal when next season's Eastern Conference hierarchy will be tougher to navigate and is still a risk. A justifiable one, sure, yet a risk all the same. Coming up next is a team that is yet to be determined. Holding on to Kyle Lowry through last season made some sense if the Raptors planned to bring him back, or could net a nifty return in the sign of trade. They did neither, accepting Precious Achua and Goran Dragic while Lowry is asking to sell low, knowing there was at least one package returning higher value available to them in March. This deal could be viewed differently if the Raptors were trying to give the greatest Raptor of all time a proper send-off. But they spent the season playing in Tampa rather than Toronto and wound up shutting him down to close the year. Declaring them outright losers still goes a touch too far though, mostly because they negotiated a new deal with NBA team architect extraordinaire Masai Ujiri. His return is monumental for the franchise, and he, more than any other executive, deserves the benefit of the doubt. Though, Toronto's signing of the actually terrible Sam Dekker does in fact has the limits of that leeway. Next is my personal favorite team, the Los Angeles Lakers. Russell Westbrook's trade defines the Los Angeles Lakers off-season, but that's not the entirety of it. They made other moves on the margins during actual free agency, and their roster makes more sense because of it. Bagging Carmelo Anthony, Trevor Ariza, Kent Bazemore, Wayne Ellington, and Malik Monk on minimum deals will beef off the spacing of a half-court offense that desperately needs breathing room. They are snipers of varying effectiveness and function. An example, Wayne Ellington prefers to work in motion. But the Lakers gave up their two leading three-point makers from last season to nab Westbrook, one of the league's worst jump shooters ever. Adding even league average marksman goes a long way under the circumstances. Here's the thing though, Kendrick Nunn is a more awkward fit as someone who prefers to operate on ball, but he provides more north-south jet fuel that converted 42.1% of his catch-and-fire triples last season. Snagging him for a taxpayer's mid-level exception is a worthwhile talent in a vacuum play. Dwight Howard does nothing for the Lakers' floor balance, but he does come cheap, has experience playing beside Anthony Davis, and is a much better rim runner than Andre Drummond. Dylan Horton Tucker's return also doesn't help with Los Angeles shooting, but as a 20-year-old who can defend a bunch of different positions has value to a team that's nearly ran off every other future asset. None of these moves turn the Westbrook acquisition into a no-risk proposition, nor does it excuse the Lakers' decision to let Alex Caruso walk despite having the ability to keep him. But Los Angeles have entered free agency with supremely limited flexibility following the Westbrook blockbuster, and they managed to flesh out this rotation in a way that promises actual depth and spacing. Additionally, as for now, the list of Lakers moves does not include overpaying Dennis Schroder. That's a huge win. Oh, and speaking of Dennis, he is our first loser of this free agency. Plenty of free agents have ostensibly seen their markets implode. As an example, Lauri Markkanen is still unsigned and he will be lucky to get a contract that is noticeably above the non-taxpayers mid-level exception. Victor Oladipo is headed back to the Miami Heat on a minimum deal, and etc. Schroder's market regression amounts to a massive L even by those standards. He turned down a $84 million extension from the Lakers earlier this year, and now he finds himself unsigned. Sure, Oladipo is kind of in the same boat. He passed on a 2-year $45.2 million contract extension from the Houston Rockets during the middle of last season, but his lack of appeal is at least somewhat what tied to his health. He's working his way back from another right quad injury. He has also resigned with the team that owns his bird rights, giving him the opportunity to reboot his value and secure a larger payday in 2022 independent of other teams' cap space. Schroder's case is less explicable. He missed time toward the end of the season while in league's health and safety protocols and needed quickly to ramp up for the players, but his value was waffling long before then. The Lakers forked over Danny Green and a first rounder in hopes the Schroder would inject some much needed shot making, both beside LeBron James and without him. But the thing is, he did not deliver. His shooting percentages at the rim and from deep fell off their career high marks from 2019 to the 2020 season, and Los Angeles half-court offense rated inside the 25% efficiency when he ran the show since LeBron. How Schroder's foray into free agency ends is anyone's guess. Will he take a make-good deal at a cut rate to join a different team? Might the Lakers resign him on a short-term pact just to have another salary-matching anchor they can flip at the deadline? Will he get a loftier but still modest payday via a sign-and trade scenario yet to materialize? Everything is seemingly on the table, you know, except for the opportunity for Schroeder to meet, exceed, or remotely sniff the $84 million windfall he rejected months ago. Another winner is the Miami Heat. Playing against the Heat is going to suck something awful next season. They have assembled a all-get-under-your-skin team by partnering Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker, and Markieff Morris. They might lead the league in technical fouls, but stickers will point out Miami has not voted itself onto the same plane as a healthy Brooklyn Nets squad or even the reigning champion Milwaukee Bucks. Nobody has positioned to bridge that gap, relatable forgettable free agents, and for now, the off-season trade market. The Heat have at least given themselves a chance, but at this point, the East is so stacked, it might even be just as strong as the Western Conference. I'll let you guys decide on that in the comment section. Back to the Miami Heat though. Addressing the point guard and power forward positions is a big deal for the Miami Heat. Kyle Lowry dropped off a tick last season, but he's a viable off-the-dribble hub who will set physical screens and defend his butt off. Both Tucker and Morris are better options at the 4 than anyone Miami tried to supplant since Jay Schroder. Outside shooting remains a potential offensive wart. Neither Adebayo nor Butler reliably stretches defenses beyond the 3-point line, and Tucker, while an upgrade at the 4, splashed in just 31.4% of his corner triples during the playoffs. Still, the Miami Heat will surely be fine. They brought back Duncan Robinson on a 5-year $90 million contract that seems steep at first glance but isn't so huge when weighed against a 5-year $100 million pact the Cleveland Cavaliers handled Jarrett Allen. Head coach Eric Spoelstra is a whiz at manufacturing quality looks amid clumpiness as well. Entering a free agency period in which authoring material lips seemed impossible for almost every team, the Heat has reinserted themselves into the take them seriously clique. They win. The next team though, definitely did not win this offseason. It became pretty clear early on that the New Orleans Pelicans offseason would need to be viewed in totality before rendering a verdict. Zooming out on their moves though doesn't help. They got in Devontae Graham, Thomas Satoransky, Garrett Temple, Jonas Valanciunas, but the thing is they lost a lot of key pieces along the way. Steven Adams, Lonzo Ball, Alec Bledsoe notably. Isolating the Pelicans' moves does not reveal any one truly bad decision. The cost of shedding Adams and Bledsoe was not astronomical. They traded down 7 spots in the first round and 11 spots in the second round. But the thing is, punting on Ball isn't terrible in his own either. It feels like the Pelicans could have grabbed more from him ahead of the trade deadline if they didn't want to pay $20+ million per year for a point guard who cannot initiate the half-court offense. Then so be it. Picking up Graham is a solid business. He's coming off a down year, but he can stroke off trees that isn't so good. Combine everything together, and it starts to look dicey. The Pelicans essentially have turned all 2 pick swaps into Graham, Satoransky, Temple, Valanciunas, and 2 seconds. That verges on ugly. Commend the Pelicans for clearing cap space to chase Kyle Lowry if you so please. The same goes for the apparent $100 million overture to Chris Paul. Big swings are admirable. They missed. And their contingencies were unspectacular while lacking discernible aim. They should be flexible again next summer though, but they just saw what significant spending power might get them. Unless they have left field trade up their sleeve, this offseason's body of work is flat out bad. And last and the least, the Boston Celtics. Relative inaction and general lacklusterness is not typically the grounds to declare any team a loser. The Suns could at worst be here. And yet, there is something truly uninspiring about the Boston Celtics offseason that warrants overreaching skepticism beyond the to-be-determined status. Blocking the tax and remaining flexible in advance of the 2022 offseason is clearly a priority in this one. They gave up the number 16 pick to exchange Kemba Walker for the cheaper Al Horford and Moses Brown, and turned Tristan Thompson into Chris Dunn. Then they sent Brown to the Dallas Mavericks and took Josh Richardson into the remainder of Gordon Hayward, third exception. A move that added payroll on its face but also ensured the Celtics wouldn't be ponying up for Evan Fournier. Fear criticizing Boston for any of its moves, the status of Kemba's left knee remains in question, and the buyout he brokered with Oklahoma City was never a plausible option for the Celtics. They don't have the timeline required to ferry 2 seasons worth of star-sized dead money. Guaranteeing Fournier 3 seasons at nearly $10 million a pop is hardly a no-brainer. Acquiring Richardson's expiring contract is a nifty flyer on a player who, prior to living in Miami, could hit threes, make the occasional off-the-bounce jumper, and defend 4 positions. The Celtics have the makings of a defensive terror with him, Dunn, Horford, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and Jason Tatum. To what end though? The Celtics are currently at a severe offensive creation deficit. They effectively condensed their big man rotation by shipping out Brown and Thompson, but their best passer is now Horford and Smart. They were already reliant on banging on difficult jumpers to get by on offense. That dependence has only increased. And for what? In the name of ducking the tax for now? Cleaner books in advance of the 2022 free agency? Maybe the Celtics have an unforeseen move in them, or they will believe in some of their youngsters finally hitting. On the time being, their offseason is a meh at best, and a meh just isn't good enough for a team that finished 7th in an Eastern Conference scheduled to be even deeper next year. That's about it for me now. I'm gonna see you in the next one. Peace out.